RJ, I think the Kraken wanted to send you off on your honeymoon in style with that multi-goal comeback, the OT game winner. I, I mean, that was a game.
It certainly was a game. I mean, I just this team, man, they're gonna go down. It just feels like every single game, right? They're gonna go down 2 or 3 goals, but they definitely have a 2 goal comeback in them. It's just, do they dig themselves a hole that's 3 goals deep or less, right? And that'll tell you whether they come back or not. And it just feels like you can set your watch to it at this point. And of course, the Kraken find a way to come back in this one, when really I felt like this one actually didn't for a while fit the pattern of the last games, because the Kraken actually started pretty decently, played a pretty good first period, and then it felt like it just got worse and worse as the game went on, and worse in the second, even worse kind of to start the third. But then, in the final 10 minutes, they get their couple bounces. They get, I think, a really generous penalty call in overtime there, and they pull out the win.
I mean, look, it's I'm with you. Like, they didn't dig themselves into as big a hole as maybe they have their last couple games, or at least that homestand, that most recent homestand. Big part of that is Joey Decord. I mean, like, this is just another game where Joey is really like the thing to focus on as far as keeping this team in a game that for 40 to 50 minutes they didn't really belong being in, but that's just the way that things go with them. I even joked with Julia. I was like, if players got paid based on their actual contribution to their team, Joey Decord should have like 95% of the Kraken payroll, because he just absolutely, game after game, RJ is the reason that they find themselves in this spot.
Yeah, completely. Another great game for Joey Decord, and I think it gets lost with just how often he keeps doing it. But again, they do not get this win without him. Like, it was a goalie battle for a long time, and Dustin Wolf kind of had a letdown at the very end there. But Joey held his own in a goalie battle against, like, Dustin Wolf until the very end, was playing really, really well.
Yes. And to do it also in a game where you lose Brandon Montour in the first period, he doesn't come back, playing with 5 defensemen. Like, there's a lot of elements about this that are impressive, and I definitely want to get to all of them. But first, we've got to thank Queen Anne Beer Hall, our wonderful sponsor, for all of these Emerald City Hockey post-game lives. Again, we've been talking about it. The big news with the Beer Hall is the announcement of their third location, the Hall on Occidental, right across the street from T-Mobile Park. They're going to have the private watch party rooms and the walk-up beer window for if you're going to pregame before going to a Mariners game, all of that great stuff. Super, super excited for that to launch sometime in May. RJ, I mentioned Brandon Montour being out for that little bit and everything. I've got some stuff on the young guys, and I think we could start with that here. Thanks to the super chat from Angela Bug. Maddie Bunny Ears with the OT goal. Yay. Maddie Beniers, RJ, gets the overtime goal. Power play goal, too. And I felt like after the first period, when the power play was as poor as it was, when they went on the power play in overtime, I was like, okay, this is the most Kraken thing possible. Everybody right now has completely written you off. Like, this game's going to a shootout in everybody's mind, which means they are going to convert this power play. I said it out loud. It did happen. Maddie Beniers does it. What I thought was interesting, though, was Shane Wright obviously gets the first goal for the Kraken to start the comeback. He assists on Berkey's goal that kind of gets them to that to tying it and pushing overtime. And with the goal that Shane Wright had scored, he had tied Matty Beniers for goals on the season. And with the assist, he had tied Matty Beniers in points. Okay. Matty, of course, then has to come out in overtime, RJ, and put a little bit of distance between the two of them again, right?
Yeah, you got to respond, right? I mean, I think that's what you want to see. And I don't know that he's necessarily thinking about that competition between the two great young players the Kraken have, but he does put himself one more ahead there after Shane Wright gets a couple points. And I mean, you're right. You mentioned the power play early in this game, just how bad, how awful it was and has been. Of course, the game-winning goal is going to come on a power play in overtime. It feels so fitting for this team, right?
Yes. Actually, I misspoke. So Shane was only 1 point behind Maddie coming into this one. So Shane was up by a point. Maddie needed that goal to tie Shane in points, but he is able to pull ahead again on the goal scoring there. Maddie Beniers.
It's going to be a fun race to follow the rest of the season.
But like, how much fun is it that we have that race to follow, right? We've been talking about the young guys. They've both kind of come on later on in the season. Shane after the 3-game scratch, Maddie once Capo Caco comes in, and that line with him, Capo Caco and Jaden Schwartz gets put together. Like, this is the kind of stuff that when you are in a season like this, where you have games like tonight where everybody is happy that the team has come back, but also a lot of people are also like, ooh, watch out, draft position. You might be
Yeah.
up. This is at least like a fun storyline that everybody can be behind, because having those young players improve, build confidence, look good moving forward, it kind of fits both narratives, right? You want to see that this year. You want to see it for the future. So if you are Team Tank, it's still important that you see it down the stretch. I do think that it is fun that those two players are doing that. And then just for those who kind of maybe think the way RJ thinks, Shane Wright is doing all of this to basically tying Matty Benier's production, averaging 5 minutes less per game. So I'll just throw that out there.
And 13:05 of ice time tonight. Like, once we hit that mark of the Four Nations break, already I would put it as near inexcusable. But certainly the next game back, that kind of play, 13 minutes, that kind of ice time, absolutely inexcusable the way that Shane Wright is producing.
Well, you mean that he's being played?
Yeah, from the coaching standpoint. Yeah, putting him out there. No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. It's the
way that he's playing,
how he's producing, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
No, sorry, inexcusable to put him out there given how he's producing.
All right. And Carl, agreeing with you at the top of chat there. Freddie Fuego, good win heading into the break. I do think that, it is important that they pick up a win going into the break. I just think it'll mean everybody's going to have a much nicer time as they have this next couple weeks off there, RJ, the exception of Capo Caco, who does have to play in the Four Nations tournament. Lindsay, if you're going to go to OT, got to get the win. Maddie and Shane cooking. Future. We just talked about RJ. They are the future, and they are both, they are producing here, and they are not that far off. I mean, just because of the way this team is structured, we could very well see if they were able to continue with this hot streak, the two of them, RJ, it's not inconceivable that they could finish, maybe push for like top 3 on this team in points.
Yeah, they really could. I mean, they're climbing their way up there. They've got they've got Oliver Bjorkstrand next to Ketch, and then Schwartz above him. And the way that they're playing, I like them being able to kind of gain on those guys. And that's the race of all the things we get to follow kind of later in the season. Really focus on the young guys and just see the heights that they can hit.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that. Light with the super chat was watching Catton score 2 goals and an assist. I'm being told the Kraken won, and my boy Shane did good. Also, Disco haunts Wolf in his dreams. Yes, I got to think Dustin Wolf is tired of having to play Dan Bilesma coach teams, RJ.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some struggles there in the AHL. I mean, being the bane of his existence in the playoffs for the Calder Cup. And then he was doing so well in this one. And look, I like Dustin Wolf too. I mean, of course, when the Kraken are playing against him, it's nice if he gives up a couple ones there late, but I like him. He's an easy guy to root for. And so it was kind of cool. If anyone's going to have that kind of success, it was cool to see him. But yeah, he really kind of choked that one away at the end there.
Yeah, he did just a little bit. And then obviously Berkeley Catton going off these last couple games here, RJ, just another casual 3-point night for him. Just, good stuff. I actually did drop this in Discord because we talked about him yesterday, RJ. Marco Rossi. Is Berkeley Catton just going to be Marco Rossi?
Oh, huh.
I think
I would hope
comp.
for it is an interesting comp. I would hope for more. Just because, given where the Kraken are at as an organization,
always hope for more. I hope for every prospect that they turn into the next Wayne Gretzky.
Okay, well, given where the franchise is at and where they picked him, I think unfortunately that would not be success, just given how high the bar is. But that is an interesting comp.
Marco Rossi would lead the Kraken in goals and points, by the way. So just saying, wouldn't be that
just given how low the bar or given where the bar is. Right?
I know. I'm letting the people know. B only was able to watch. It just jumped on me. Sorry. Only was able to watch like the final 15 minutes. So as far as I saw, it was a great game. Lol. I mean, you definitely saw. Yes, you definitely saw the best parts of it. And you know what? If you were to put together a watch guide for the Seattle Kraken this season, that would probably be it. Just show up in the third period, watch. You're going to see the best that this team has.
Yeah, you can count on it so easily right now. Just watch the
Yes.
third period at this point.
And then Amanda with the super chat, appreciated Amanda. I know we hate the Flames, but is this going to make them hate us? Rivalry. And we talked about this in the last Flames game, RJ, and we talked, I casually threw out the idea of maybe are we seeing the rivalry start forming there? Just about everybody was on board with the idea that, there's hate on the one side, but there kind of needs to be that level on both. I got to think a comeback win like this, as they're, really in a fight for a playoff spot and every point matters for Calgary. I got to think nights like this does make them, look at us a little differently.
Maybe a little bit. I'm sorry to pump the brakes on this, but just as far as like the physicality and all that kind of mean stuff, like they get into it with everybody. I talked about this after the last Flames game. Like that just happens. But right, the Kraken, taking a very valuable 2 points away from Calgary. I think personally, this is the start of this is kind of a larger collapse from Calgary where look, especially after watching them play twice recently, they're not that good. There's really not a bunch of talent on this Calgary team. They are the absolute peak, I think, of really, like you mentioned after the last postgame against Calgary, of what the Kraken could be if they just played focused all the time and got the great goaltending. But there is just not much talent on this Flames roster. Like if they didn't get amazing goaltending and were like super focused and played this way every game, they'd be down in the bottom 5 of the league, just like the Kraken are. Like they're not very good. And I think the Canucks, as bad as the Canucks have been playing, they're about to leave the Flames in the rearview mirror, I think.
I've been saying it, but again, rivalries, it's like a fan base thing as much as it is an on ice thing. And I think nights like this, because the Calgary faithful are bought in, right? Like that
I think they're more mad at their
own
own team than the Kraken, though, because again, look, the Kraken, they had their normal comeback, but this was the Flames losing this game.
You're giving me nothing, RJ.
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I don't think we're at rivalry level.
It's fine. No, I think that it's one of those things that if there was like a follow-up, you look back at this as the start of something, but I don't know if, we're totally.
And they just lost their last 2. Like they've already kind of been in this slide.
Yeah. James, Shane Wright is our 1C. Start playing him as such. Ryan agreeing. Let Shane cook. Everybody kind of on that bandwagon at this point. Coop, there's a lot wrong with this team, but they've got guts, and I love Matty Beniers. Talking about, what's up with this team. Talked about Joey Decord already, RJ, and how he keeps this team in it. I did like that we saw the team transition later on in the game, RJ, to what I've been talking about defensively. They decided to kind of collapse in, defend the slot, let those perimeter shots go when the game was 1-0, right? And I was like, okay, we're seeing some progress here defensively. And then Nazem Kadri just walks in and stands in the middle of 4 Seattle Kraken players and is able to get that second goal. I just throw my hands up and I just say, I don't know what else to do, right? Like they're making the X's and O's adjustments that I feel like they need to be making, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and don't get me started on that one, because you take the freeze frame, and I tweeted the freeze frame, right, where there's 4 Kraken defenders kind of in that little box there. Huberdeau, you force the puck carry to his backhand. He is no longer dangerous. He has to pass that puck. He can't cut to the net. You're in position. You're exactly where you need to be. And yet Kadri is able to just kind of skate through you, jump ahead, and get the easy tap in. And really, you've done all the things right, X's and O's, like you just said, but it's a matter of just being focused, having your head on a swivel, knowing exactly where the opponent is, and then finally engaging physically. Because Cale Fleury, I think, kind of sees him, but instead of bodying him up, taking one little step into the guy, he just kind of throws his stick out there and, maybe just tries to get his stick in the way. And it's that last little bit of just being focused and engaging physically that the Kraken have not done all season long. And I know Fleury hasn't been there the whole time, but it's always somebody different.
It's the Morgan Frost goal from the first game, where you have 4 guys and he's able just to get that shot off untouched because nobody steps up into him.
And I know we want to have fun after the win, but this is one that I was just like going to go off on if they didn't complete this comeback. And I still, I guess, to an extent am, but just there's no excuse for that. And it just highlights the deficiencies with this team where you can do all the right things X's and O's wise, but the effort just isn't there.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just one of those things. Like I said, I tried to hold it in. I made it like 12 minutes before bringing it up. But it was one that did really bother me. Just watching this one. Coop bringing up Vince Dunn playing half an hour tonight. He played a little over 29 minutes in this one. RJ again mentioned Brandon Montour gets injured upper body in the first period, does not come back. Unclear what it was that was injured or how that injury occurred. And obviously the Kraken night of the game is not going to give you anything. I am curious with things like going into the break, if Win will know kind of or get any sort of update from the team.
Yeah, I mean it might be just when they come back because there's not going to be any media chance to ask anybody. I guess if it's particularly bad, maybe you'll get like just a tweet update from the team in a few days or something. But I imagine just day to day till the end of the break, and so that's of course a big loss for the Kraken with Brandon Montour going out. I guess good news is that it's well timed with the Four Nations break. If ever you are going to get injured, right before a 2-week break is probably the time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's like kind of I guess, like, if it has to happen, it happens there. I think the other thing of note is, what we talked about at the beginning there with the comment from Coop. Vince Dunn stepped up. And Vince Dunn stepped up, played half of this game, RJ, or at least half of, regulation time in that sense, and looked good. Like he looked like Vince Dunn of old. We weren't seeing some of those kind of unforced errors in the defensive zone from him the way that we've maybe seen in the last little bit through the second and third period there. I liked kind of seeing the old Vince Dunn being back as the guy defensively for this team.
Yeah, he stepped up into that spot, even though he was pretty tired at first. I mean, did you see the end of that 2-minute shift or so where
Yes.
he was just so exhausted he could barely even move around the ice, but he kind of was able to gather himself, and he can handle these big minutes. Like he can, if you put him in that spot, he can really thrive and be that number one guy. As we've seen plenty with the Kraken, but yeah, if Montour's out past the break, he's going to have to do that. I think he's capable of it, but it's going to be a big workload for him.
Right. Plenty of people like El Bell love that the guys get to start the break on a winning note, hoping vibes will help them. Like I said earlier, I think it's huge for them going into this break as they're going to be able to rest and recover. Just having that win as that last kind of memory going into it, I think is going to be big for them. And as B's pointing out, it's kind of opposite of the game versus the Sharks going into the break last year, where it was very, very different, and I'm sure impacted them differently. And I know there's, the people that are team tank, there's the idea of the draft position and all of that stuff, RJ. But one of the things that, and maybe I'm just telling myself this to feel better about it or whatever, but I don't hate the Kraken winning games down the stretch here if it means that maybe Dan Bylsma hangs around. And I know that's going to be a controversial opinion given the way last post game went and everything that kind of went on there. But thinking about it for the last day and a half after that last post game, I really do want to see Dan kind of continue with this team next year, have there be some level of, carryover from this season. If the front office isn't necessarily going to look the same, I would like at least the coach to look the same, because I do feel like he has a lot to offer this organization and a lot to offer this team. And just this year, the setup wasn't really there for him to maximize that. And I'd like him to be around next year. And so if it takes them winning some games down the stretch for that to happen, I'm okay with it. But I understand if that's like a very controversial take for a lot of people for different reasons.
Yeah, I think I would understand if that was a controversial take. I don't fully agree with you here on that one. I'm pretty much in lockstep with you on the coaching staff. I think we feel pretty much the same way about this coaching staff, and that they've pushed a lot of the right buttons and done most of what they can. But as far as wins down the stretch, I think it's more likely that if the wins do save somebody's job, that it would also entail saving Ron Francis's job, and I don't think that's worth the trade-off.
I think things maybe change it so it's more likely that he then goes to president role
And
instead
that's
of
not worth the
being
trade-off
outright
for me.
going. Yeah, and that's
That is
fair.
worst case scenario
Yeah,
for me.
that's fair. But it is something that as we have nights like tonight where the Kraken do win, it is one of the things that I think about and that I am, potentially happy for, is the idea of keeping Coach Dan around. Olivia, love the Kraken win. Interestingly, another game where Cartier is essentially benched after taking 2 penalties with the roughing call there. Ty Cartier's ice time these last couple of games, RJ, has been low. I mean, he is a fourth liner. Fourth liners tend not to get too much, especially if they're not going to be part of special teams groups, RJ. I mean, Mitchell Stevens as a center on that line only got 10:04 tonight. Do you think that it's that Ty's getting benched, or is it just that he's he's kind of playing the role that he's out there to play, which is he's not going to get out there that much. And as we've talked about over the last couple of years, that's actually pretty normal, is that your fourth line might play single digit minutes in a game. Whereas in the past, we were used to, like Dave Hackstall kind of having 4 lines that he can kind of roll all for about, the same amount or have that be closer. And this year, we're just seeing more of a traditional ice time breakdown where you have somebody like Matty Beniers chewing up almost 23 minutes as a forward. Obviously, overtime helps with that.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And on the Cartier thing, I think it is interesting because, look, I think as a fourth liner, he had 749 tonight. That's roughly what we've seen from him in the last few games. I think that's kind of the default amount of ice time as a fourth line winger, right, that you're going to get if you don't play on either special team. And I don't think Cartier is really doing anything to earn anything more than that. Because then sometimes if you're playing really well, you can get that bumped up. And I believe it was Viren, but apologies to Viren if it wasn't you, on the last post game. And there were just so many thoughts flying all around on the last post game. I didn't have the chance to get them all. But I think it was Viren that was asking if Ty Cartier maybe is kind of falling away from that tier of just being an everyday NHLer. And it was one I wanted to get to because I kind of agree. And as we're talking about players to bring back or not bring back for next season, I wouldn't mind not qualifying Ty Cartier. I would like to see somebody else in that spot. I don't know. He's not really producing very much. And I don't know. I'd want to see just somebody else trying to have a shot at that job. I haven't been impressed by what I've seen from him.
I am trying so hard to make this post game fun and happy.
I'm sorry. I was thinking this even last game. I was.
Well, no, I know, but I said this months ago. Right? I remember standing on the steps at Climate Pledge Arena when people were talking about, oh, Ty hasn't had a lot of production this year and that kind of stuff. And we were like 2 months in, and I said, look, the reality with Ty Cartier is that he is a tweener. Like that is just who he is. Like what we're seeing from him is the max. And for a guy like him who has taken the path to get there, the fact that he's got as many NHL games under his belt at his age is unbelievably impressive, and that we should just appreciate that for him, that he really beat the odds and kind of got to that point where he could be an everyday NHLer, because guys that follow his path to the NHL, that just doesn't happen for them, right? Guys with his makeup, with his the production that he's had at lower levels and all of that stuff, it doesn't happen for them. And the fact that it happened for him was the win, right? Like we don't need more from him than that. Like we can just appreciate that he got there and he beat the odds to do so. And so like I've been there. I'm there. I've been there. I'm totally with you. It's just like, gosh, everybody's so excited in chat. I'm trying to stay excited, and everything just kind of comes back around to this stuff.
I'm sorry, Dylan. I'm really not helping you with that.
I know. I mean, it's just kind of naturally where some of this stuff goes. Coop, and I did see this from a couple other people as well. Coop's just the one that's in front of me here. Kind of thought they gave Dunn that call as a makeup for the Flames, essentially picking him on the play before while subbing. There was a couple people that have kind of mentioned that, like Bro Dunn here, what a makeup call. It did feel like the light call in overtime, like you said earlier. It did kind of have that vibes. That being said, I don't know that refs would ever like go for a makeup call in overtime. And I feel like normally NHL refs late in the game, overtime situation, they're swallowing their whistles unless they feel like it's worthy of being called.
I mean, they usually are, but it's what we just saw, I think. I mean, that there was really not much there, especially given that it was overtime. Like that, that one was a pretty soft one, to the point where at the risk of people coming after me, I did tweet it just because, I mean, I'm sorry, there wasn't much there. I would not want that called against the Kraken in overtime if it was the other way. I certainly wouldn't want a game being decided on that. And I will say one more thing about this. Like, I said this last post game too. Like, I hope we can kind of do away with the whole like complaining about the officiating thing after that first Calgary game. It kind of became not so much in this group. Like, I think a lot of you are pretty good about it, but just generally on Kraken social media and whatnot, because the Kraken have benefited from calls a lot more than they've been hurt by them this season. Like the numbers bear that out. Like I see it just about every game. Like these things have a way of evening out, and it's been a lot in the Kraken's favor this season. So it just doesn't really sound good to complain about it a lot.
Yeah. Got a couple super chats there. I'm going to get to those in just a moment, but I do want to hit these real quick because I will lose them as I go to look at the super chats, and I've wanted to get to these. First off, from David, I just introduced my sister to the sport of hockey, so that was good timing for a dramatic win. Yes, it was. Great game to pick there, David. hope your sister enjoyed it and is going to become a fan, because that would be awesome. And then Jeffrey's here, but tons of people have talked about this already in the thing. RJ, did you see how happy Shane was when Maddie hits the game winner? It made my heart grow 3 sizes. Did you see Shane like smothering Andre Burakovsky on the bench there, RJ, celebrating the big win in overtime when it happened?
I did not, and now I'm going back and trying to find it.
It's worth getting and probably clipping. Like I said, lots of people in chat talking about it. I definitely wanted to talk about it. And that was one of the super chats from Becca. Have we dug into the Shane on Berkey murder attempt yet? Beautiful overtime bench Selly. Yes, it did look like he was trying to like choke him or snuff him out in some capacity there. That is what it looked like on the bench. And appreciate the super chat there, Becca, as RJ is looking at it. And then Zoe with the super chat. It's 1 a.m.
I'm sorry. What is this? What is this?
It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's great. That's great. I'm clipping it now.
Yep. Zoe, it's 1 a.m. in Toronto, but this was worth staying up for. It was, Zoe. I hope you're having a fun trip in Toronto. Like that sounds like fun. I was there a couple months ago. It's a beautiful city. Hope you're having a good time. And then Andrew, the Kraken scoring an overtime goal after a timeout with Jess is one of my most favorite things ever. It just makes me so happy. I appreciate you bringing this up, Andrew, because I did want to talk about this as well, because the power play was a story in this game. I feel like it was a pretty big story with this game, with the Kraken, having the long 5-on-3 attempt in the first period, not getting it, having then that next power play attempt later on in the first period, and it was really bad. They just could not enter the zone when they were in the offensive zone, RJ. Whole times where there was just all 5 Kraken on the perimeter, just nobody anywhere close to Dustin Wolf. I don't know what that is on the power play. But I thought that the power play in overtime, the 4-on-3, making use of the space, the way that they had the player movement working, the way that they were working the offensive zone. Only one thing I did not like about that, and that was the placement of Chandler Stevenson in a spot where he was never going to be a threat shooting the puck. And Calgary very much knew that, so they could clog up passing lanes. I wasn't necessarily into the idea of that. I know it was a good angle for him to potentially distribute, but he's not on the side that he needs to be for a one-timer. Wasn't really in a spot where he could maybe shoot it that much either. I thought that was a little strange to me. But I did want to talk about the power play because, like I said, it was such an early story and they were able to get that conversion at the end there, RJ. I still don't entirely know what the issue has been, as they have struggled of late on the power play. Again, there are some obvious things like the lack of net front presences, the lack of player movement at times. It's kind of gone back to, in some ways, what we were seeing last year, with just a lot of passing up top and at the perimeter. But it does feel like when the Kraken are able to be in situations like this, where they're able to have a timeout and Jess is able to draw something up, right? Every time that we've seen that happen, it feels like through most of the year, they're able to get something done. Like it does feel like there is some sort of component of guys being out there for the power play normally and it just kind of happening. And then when they're able to go out there with like a specific agenda, they're able to accomplish it. And so I'm just kind of wondering why it takes these timeouts and a specific play being drawn up rather than just maybe having that kind of built into the power play all the time.
Well, for a group whose one of their main problems is focus, I could see that making a difference when you kind of put everybody on the same page. And I mean, because the Kraken didn't call timeout before the 5-on-3 that they had earlier in this game. And they've had a few 5-on-3s lately. Some they've called timeouts right beforehand, others they haven't. And I'm trying to remember if it's been where they've scored every time they've called a timeout and they didn't whenever they didn't call a timeout. It's like this last, like, what, 6 or 7 games, but I think it's close to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe in the 6 or 7 game stretch, there has been times earlier this year where
I know I'm talking about recently.
Timeout. But recently, it does feel like that conversion rate is extremely high, and it's like the only time that I can think of them scoring when they're on the power play. And so I just think that is like an interesting an interesting thing. And I would love to ask, not that we'll have the ability to, or normally, and then certainly not in this next little stretch here because of the Four Nations break, but I would love to ask whether it's Dan or preferably Jess Campbell, is it that the plays are being drawn up specifically for the PK that you've been seeing in that game? Or is it just like, okay, in this, down and distance territory with this much time left on the clock in this style power play, these are the plays that we like to go with? Or is it targeted to the PK that you're going up against? Because I think that would also tell us a lot of if it's just, okay, having that chance after already seeing that PK work a couple times in this one, you're able to draw up something to take advantage of the weak spots that you've noticed. Of course, it all like balloons out to, you could just watch tape ahead of time and try to game plan for that. But it is hard to do that in the regular season and kind of change the power plays approach game by game. And so I would understand why that doesn't happen.
Yeah. No, I think that is a good question. The question somewhere in there in the beginning.
Yeah. I know. Sorry. So wanted to give you time to get everything out for the video there. And speaking
It's good.
of,
I have the video clipped. I just don't know what to caption it. Anyone
that's a
can
good
help me
point.
out.
Put in your responses below, everybody. Angela Bug with the super chat. Appreciated, Angela Bug. RJ's laugh when he spotted Shane's face wash on Berkey gave me life. Poor Berkey getting the big smelly glove treatment. Was it a bet? Did he promise Maddie he'd noogie Berkey? We may never know. We definitely might not ever know, because I don't know who made the trip up to Calgary who could ask after the game.
I know. So, okay, I'm got to be more positive on this post game, but I'm going to repeat a complaint that I've made several times before. Dylan, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm going to mute you soon.
Oh, yeah. But, okay, come on. I think people understand. Why does this always happen when they're on the road?
Yes.
There's so much of this fun stuff that I'd love to just ask about after the game, but it feels like this disproportionately happens when they're on the road.
Yes, it does feel that way. All the fun stuff happens when they're on the road. I think we can all agree on that.
And they don't even they're not coming back for a practice tomorrow where we can ask about it. No, they're gone for weeks.
Yes. No, there's like zero ability to talk about this at all.
Maddie's booing me.
Yeah. Stratic, which goal was your favorite? Now, I'm tempted to say the Maddie Beniers OT winner, not because it was the OT winner, but just because of the Shane on Berkey violence that it started. But I'm actually going to say the Andre Burakovsky goal, RJ, because of that weird, like, awkward handoff between him and Shane Wright, like from the neutral zone all the way up to Berkey shooting it, where it felt like neither one of them wanted it. It was like a game of hot potato.
Same team. Yep. That's what the coach is yelling from the bench, what everyone should be yelling.
Yep. It was just like, I don't know what was going on there. It was extremely awkward. And of course, that means it results in an Andre Burakovsky goal.
Yep, exactly. It has to be something awkward like that that results in the goal. I'm going to go with the Shane Wright goal because the Maddie Beniers won in overtime. That's fun. It's the OT winner. He does shoot to his kind of normal spot there, that he likes. But I'm going to go with like the Shane Wright goal. I didn't want to do a right place, right time kind of pun because I feel like that's way overdone. By the way, like the tweet there was not a shot at our buddy Charles from Circling Seattle Sports, who apparently had tweeted that already like a second ago and I didn't see it. But I was like, I'm not going to do the right place, right time pun. But seriously, that is the exact spot you need to be in to collect those kinds of rebounds and chances. And so few Kraken players go there consistently. But Shane Wright is one of those guys. And that's where you go, the slot, to be rewarded. And he was.
Yeah, no, it is good stuff. Elbel, the one time my husband sat and watched hockey with me was from halfway through the third. I'm just glad the Kraken made things more interesting to try to help me convert him into a hockey fan. Yes, I mean, this is the kind of game, and that is the perfect timing to have that happen. And also, might I suggest, moving forward, maybe we try this as a tactic. Bring your husband in late in these games, see if they can complete the comebacks, and then we'll file that away for next season, and we could just kind of maybe do that for the full 82 next year.
Yeah, these are the kind of things we have to learn, the data points we have to get. This is what we talked about as far as, looking forward to next season, right? Figure out what works.
Yep. Postlight, this game is how you describe the phrase, that's Kraken hockey, baby. It really is. Certainly year 4 Kraken hockey. Every year has kind of got a little bit of a different vibe, different energy about it. This is the one that it really feels like that. And then Earhead 6 draft position. Isn't this thought to be a weaker draft class? Not much generational franchise altering talent. It's all about building up our youth, working on cohesiveness and fluidity. I agree that building up the youth that you already have in Maddie and Shane is kind of priority one right now, because you do need to make them as good as possible. I will say this, that in my mind, and I think it's kind of shaping out to be this way for a lot of people looking at this draft class, there is a top four. And so I do think, and the Kraken are really in this weird, awkward position, RJ, where I feel like if the Kraken were like going to be drafting 7th or 8th right now, it would be like, yeah, whatever, get the wins, you're fine. It's not going to make that much of a difference in this draft class, picking between, say, 7 and 10. But with them currently like kind of being on pace to pick 4th in a draft class where there's like 4 guys that could turn into like, really changing and helping out your franchise in big significant ways, it makes it extremely hard for me to like totally abandon the idea of the team tank thing. And that's why I just can't. I am like still on board with it, but I do think that yes, getting Shane and Maddie going in the long run might be even more important than being able to draft one of those 4 players this year, just because 2 is greater than 1, RJ.
Yeah, it really is. And when you take a kind of just a sober look at the overall situation for the team and how desperately they need a star player, that's one of the rare chances that you ever get to bring in a star player, especially one who you have from the time they're 18 and they're cost controlled. There's very few things as valuable as that for a hockey team.
Yes. Myron, did we enjoy the Gilroy content? So we don't have to like totally go into all of the Gilroy content that was part of the first intermission there, RJ, about Gilroy, California. I don't know if you caught it on the broadcast or if you're busy packing for the honeymoon and everything.
I did catch it.
But I do think that it speaks volumes about the first 2 periods of this game, that the first intermission break was spent talking about Gilroy, California, and then the second intermission break was spent talking about storylines from around the NHL, right? Like there was very little discussed on the Kraken Hockey Network intermission reports about the game actually being played, because there wasn't much to talk about. I was sitting there the whole time like, what are we going to talk about post game? Like, I have no idea what we're supposed to talk about. Thankfully, the Kraken came through in a big way, gave us the comeback win. But I do think that it speaks volumes about how this game kind of started, when that was like the most that people were chatting about, like in Discord and everything, was Gilroy, California, the garlic capital of the world.
Yes, which of course we're familiar with, with the drive up
Very.
and down to San Jose, right? You go through Gilroy every single time. And so, of course, I was very familiar with it, although I understand not everyone being. But I was watching the game with my mother-in-law, who's here to watch Fuji, and she's from San Jose, as my wife is. And so, what, Gilroy? They're talking about Gilroy? Well, that was pretty funny.
Yep. No, it was really funny. I was kind of like the same thing. I was like, I know about the garlic ice cream. I know about that stuff. The amount of times I've smelled Gilroy driving between the Bay Area and LA is a lot. But yeah, it was pretty funny. Everybody,
Coco here was the one who told them about the garlic ice cream.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that, because I do think that it was good. Everybody talking about just, loathing the Flames and all of that kind of stuff. And then Carl asking, I know we won, but pulling Joey to go 5v3 in overtime would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have. Hey, I'm for the rest of the season. If you're in overtime, I'm in pull your goalie camp for OT.
Yep. Edward, amuses me. A guy named Frost plays for the Flames. And ironic. he apparently can only score if he's playing the Kraken. And then Coop, I'm with you, Dylan. Maddie and Shane need stability. 3 coaches in 3 years is way too much. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it from like that standpoint. I was trying to just think like the group as a whole. But yes, if you are trying to focus on developing those young players in the very crucial time as they're, entering season 4 for Maddie, second full year for Shane, having them in that situation would be less than ideal for sure. And then Lindsay, wins are fine if we get points from Maddie, Shane, and or Kako, or put in winning effort. And I do think that's all
yeah,
good.
Can that be the rule? Yeah,
I'm fine with that being the rule for sure. And then Striatic asking an interesting question: has Dan been developing Shane Wright well so far? And I think that's a really interesting one, and maybe I'll work it into the deep dive, RJ. But like it feels like this year with the Shane Wright kind of scratching and everything, and the quotes that we kind of learned from that wonderful article that Bob Condor wrote for the Kraken website, felt like it was very much like an organization move. And I do think Dan was a part of the conversation that was had there, but it felt like that was something that like the team kind of decided
Well, I
together.
believe Dan said that it's an organizational decision.
Yeah, right. And so, oh, did he? Yeah, he might have. It's so long ago now, feels like.
Yeah.
But like it felt like it was this, organizational decision. It was an organizational decision. But I still feel like Dan having the history of coaching him in CV and getting the most out of him in CV and having that personal relationship with him, being able to kind of maybe get through to him on things like shooting more, having a more aggressive approach when handling the puck and having the puck, putting him in those spots. Like the big thing I think of when, we talk about Shane post that scratch and what got him going and what got his confidence going was him playing in that spot on the power play and getting those power play goals, right? I think about that Sharks game right after he was scratched. And he's able to pick up a couple power play goals there. I do think that Dan has contributed a lot to Shane kind of turning things around this season and going from having that kind of fourth liner mindset to having the more aggressive, productive mindset that he's had here so far. And while Dan is the person, holding him back in terms of ice time, because that is definitely something that Dan controls, I do feel like in his spots as far as deploying him and where he uses him on the power play and in special teams has very much been in service of developing Shane and building up his confidence so that he is at this point where he is tied with Maddie in terms of points, despite playing a lot fewer minutes.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you on that. I think, look, the minutes thing, that's an organizational decision. They've clearly made that choice, and it's not all on Dan. But given that that's the choice that the organization has made, Dan's put him in the best spots you can while giving him that deployment. And, then there's all the, the intangible stuff about just his confidence, right? Making sure that he doesn't, get too down on himself after that start to the season that he had and everything. And just like the conversations that we don't get to hear, but we're having behind closed doors about what was going on. Those have seemed to work out, and his mind was able to get right.
Yeah, no, I think it is what it is. And yes, it's an organizational decision on the minutes thing, but also like Dan has the ability to control that in game. Like,
He does.
if he starts putting him out there more, like Ron Francis isn't going to come to him during the second intermission or call from upstairs and be like, sit him. Like,
no, that's true. That's true. But I'm like, this is the end of the rope that I will give Dan on that. Like, I'll give him to the Four Nations break. After that, no excuses. Got to play it more.
Yes. Let's see. Talks on again. I think most people are with you on Ron Francis. It seems like there when looking at things. Jenna, I was saying put Hayden in. Don't know why we stopped. Are you in favor of John Hayden over Ty Cartier on that fourth line spot? Kind of going back to that conversation we had around Carts earlier.
I would be. Yeah,
I am.
I just haven't been impressed by Cartier's game, and I've liked Hayden in a little bit that I've seen of him. Certainly, if he's only playing 7 minutes, I think Hayden can do more in that time.
Yes, I agree with that. I think Hayden does a little bit more of what this team needs, right? He goes to the net front a little bit more consistently than Ty Cartier has had. Like I've said all along, Ty Cartier is your Brandon Tanev replacement. He's like your Brandon Tanev light. He's not going to be as productive as Brandon Tanev, but he plays the same style, can bring that same level of energy. That's more his role than doing some of the other stuff that they're asking him to do right now, which is be a physical player who can be the guy to get into scuffles and whatever. Like, it's just not who he is. It's who John Hayden is, though. John Hayden could do that. He can piss people off.
Oh yeah, sure can.
Yeah, and Olivia mentioning the only reason for the Carts benching suggestions, box score lists him as only taking 9 shifts. I did notice that, and that is interesting.
Yeah, and then Viren asking, like, on that, would you try and send Carts down to CV? I think if you need the room, I wouldn't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fine. For sure. Apparently Donato scored tonight. Oh,
I can be happy for Ryan Donato. That doesn't take anything away.
No, I know. It's just from the Kraken side.
I know.
Yeah. let's see. Lots of talk on the Ron Francis front and everything kind of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it back where I think it was Coop that was saying something like, I didn't realize RJ was fully on the get rid of. Yeah, I didn't realize you were fully
Yes.
on the fire Francis train. Can I just talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I just want to like clarify from the start of the season, my whole thing was if the Kraken missed the playoffs, then Francis has to go. That's just clearly the mark that needed to be met given the spending and everything that happened. I'm going to just assume at this point they're not making the playoffs. I feel like we're all kind of there. And so that's really why that shift has been made. If they make the playoffs, I will change my mind completely, but I just don't see it happening.
No, it is not happening. And Edward, RJ gets his voice back, and this is how he chooses to use it. Tisk tisk.
Sorry,
do we know who
everybody.
got the belt? By the way, has anybody seen anything on the belt front? Do we
Let me
know
go
anything
check
about
the
that?
latest on social media, but I have not seen anything yet. But I'm sure chat would tell us immediately. But I don't see anything on Twitter yet.
Yeah. I like all the people talking about the garlic ice cream too. That is some good stuff.
Yep.
good stuff. I have to admit it, the ice cream was a one and done. I understand that, Coco. I would probably be in the same boat. Let's see. Your head to burn in the hand is worth two in the bush. High upside if a prospect doesn't necessarily pan out. Far more fail than cut it. Plus, Wright and Beniers have a third. Kako is super important too. And you've already got Berkeley Catton, guys like Carson Rykhoff, Julius Miettinen, who I think are going to be big contributors as well. All that kind of stuff in the system. That's why, yeah, I'll take games like tonight where the young guys play well, score. It hurts your draft position, but I do think that it is more important for that reason.
Yeah. And I'm going to hold my tongue on the Kako thing. Yeah. I've been negative enough already. I'm sorry, I'm not helping.
Tried so hard, everybody. Let's see. Mike, everybody's talking about the lower minutes played by Shane, but it's also about the line matchups. Is he ready for exposure to the opposing team's top six, RJ?
I think so. For at least situationally for different matchups. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm okay if you want to shelter him from like a Connor McDavid or a Nathan McKinnon when you play those teams. But like against the example I keep using because he had 12 minutes is the Anaheim Ducks. There's nobody to shelter him from. Go for it. He's ready.
Right. I would argue today. Who are you going to shelter him from?
Yeah. There's nobody that good on the Flames that you're sheltering him from. He's good enough. Go for it.
I think it'd be fine. I think he can handle it. And I think he could handle it as well as Chandler Stevenson has been handling it. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing is you look who you're taking the time away from too. And it's not, you have to look, is that really that much of a downgrade?
Yeah. Lindsay, the broadcast talking about Tolvanen begging for Finnish food only for them to get it when Kako shows up was funny. Did
you catch that on the broadcast?
I did not catch that. No.
That was great. They were talking about how Tolvanen I think it was Piper saying like in the morning they were talking to Tolvanen and he's wanted Finnish food there for a long time. And then of course as Kako shows up, then all of a sudden they do the Finnish food specials at 32 Bar and Grill and all that stuff. So
yeah,
this is why it's important to have like a critical mass of Finns on any roster so they're actually respected.
Yeah. Let's see. Ricky, his ice time is 3 out of 4 minutes behind his contemporaries. Matty Beniers was playing 17 a game at this stage. It ought to have been ratcheted up by now. I will say there was like kind of less in front of Matty Beniers at the time than Shane has had here. Like again, this all goes back to the decision to even bring in another center in Chandler Stevenson. Like it just like you knew you had Shane coming in. Like what are you?
See now you're getting negative. Look at that.
Yeah, but it's Chandler Stevenson. It's fine. Doesn't count.
Okay.
Couple super chats here. Nope. Sorry, RJ and everyone. I got to hear that thought on Kako.
Okay.
It's a super chat.
All right. Damn. All right, we have to do this. I'm sorry. Okay. So the thought on Kako, and look, again, I love what he's brought. I love everything he's doing. He's been fantastic. But as far as him being like a centerpiece, like a Matty Beniers and Shane Wright or somebody of that level, right? I still just have a little bit of pause here. And like the comparison that I've recently been thinking to use is Eli Tolvanen. Actually, they're the other Finn, right? Where I look at Kako's production and it's been fantastic, right? 24 games at the Kraken, 17 points in those 24 games. like that's amazing, right? You're thinking, okay, top 6 guy for sure. Dylan, through 24 games, how many points do you think Ellie Tolvanen had?
I'm sure it's very comparable.
Yeah, he had 15 points in those first 24 games. It 10 goals to Kako's 5. So, a little bit more of a scoring type, goal scoring type bent too. I just think we have to be careful about, a player catching fire when he gets to a new team. And look, I love everything he's doing. He's got more of a draft pedigree than Ellie Tolvanen. They're both first round picks, but Kako a lot higher. I think he's going to be better than what Tolvanen has turned into, but just have to keep that in mind as far as like, especially when we're talking contract at the end of this season. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
then Viren with the yes in all caps.
yeah, I was gonna say I think there yes.
And I needed some backup there. I was struggling.
No, there. I'm with you on a lot of that, RJ. The difference is Capo Caco plays a style of game that will act like is more valuable than the style of game Ellie Tolvanen does, which is as a depth scorer kind of, and that's it.
For
Right?
sure.
Capo Caco can be a net front presence. He's a great defender on the perimeter in the defensive zone. Like he just adds more to the team. Again, I'm not trying to say that Capo Caco is going to turn into a point per game guy with this group. I'm not saying that he's going to turn into a huge difference maker, but he has been a difference maker in the sense that he is playing the style of game that this team has desperately needed. He plays a style of game that is beneficial to players who play with him on his line because he's going to drive the net, because he's going to soak up defensive pressure, because he does give more time and space to guys like Matty Beniers, and Matty Beniers has been more successful with that time and space. I think there is more to Capo Caco than there is to Ellie Tolvanen just from how they play the game. And so I think that that's worth having Capo Caco around long term for. I'm not saying that he should be signed to like 8 mil a year or anything like that, but I also don't think that that's really going to be in the cards for him either. But I think if you're not going to keep Capo Caco, what you'd be going out and looking for is somebody who is a power forward who can help make time and space for Matty Beniers and has the skill to capitalize on some chances or set up Matty from time to time. You'd basically just be looking for Capo Caco all over again. And so you've already got him.
I agree with everything you just said. And you're right about all of that. But I just think when you get into talking about like franchise cornerstone on that level, you got to temper expectations just a little bit, especially in terms of production.
Yes. All right. Well, yeah. Then I can be the biggest of all of the dark Seattle rain clouds and just say this franchise doesn't have any franchise cornerstones.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to disagree with you.
So it's fine. I do also like Viren and Amanda getting what I was doing with Chandler Stevenson. And yes, I am trying to fuel Chandler Stevenson because I don't know, maybe do you think it's a Sasky boy thing that like the more everybody's like, dumping that on, the more than they produce? I wonder.
Interesting. You can't really ask him, can you?
I was just going to say, I'll ask him, but no, I don't think I can. Yeah, you're right.
I wouldn't.
You're right. Thinking about it for a moment might be a bad idea. Do you feel like you elevated your game because everybody was hating on you?
And he's the last guy who would probably give a good answer on that anyway.
There are guys in that locker room that I feel like you could ask, but he's not.
Yeah, totally. You could.
Yes.
Yeah.
JTB Hockey had this super chat as well. That we weren't able to get to it because of the Kako conversation yet. Great win. We needed a positive moment heading into the break. Will we see Daniel Sprong first game back after the break? All right. If Ty Cartier might be, we were talking about maybe sending him down. I know we were talking about John Hayden coming into the lineup. I mean, Daniel Sprong has been producing at the AHL level. Shocker. Nobody could have thought about that. Do you think that we maybe see like a double call up at the end of everything where if Grubauer's playing well, we see him come back and then maybe Daniel Sprong's on that flight too?
As one of Daniel Sprong's, biggest defenders outside of Jeff Merrick since he's got to Seattle, no, I don't think so. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't think he's getting another shot with this organization.
Yeah, probably not. And then there's the conversation around what is Finnish food, and it looks like salmon soup, RJ. And
yeah, that's what they're having at the bar and grill.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what's in that? Do we know? Because like salmon soup on its own sounds a little weird to me. I have I do like salmon. It sounds like it's not that it sounds weird to me. All food sounds weird to me because I'm like the pickiest eater alive. It's just that like I don't have a concept in my mind for like what would be in soup with salmon. Like, does it just replace like, is it like a stew type thing? It just replaces like the protein there. I know of salmon chowder, and that
Right.
actually looked really
So
good.
I'm looking this up here. I believe the dish, and I'm not sure if I have the right dish, but I believe it's called lohiketo, and it is like let's see. It's in Sweden, Finland, and other Nordic countries. Consists of salmon fillets, boiled potatoes, carrots, and leeks. This is served hot
Okay,
and
so
typically seasoned with fresh dill, allspice, salt, and black pepper.
okay, so it's just like it's
It's
just
made
like a
with cream
stew.
or whole milk, making it a chowder with a creamy flavor and texture.
Okay, so it's more like a chowder
That's what
then. Okay, I was
yeah.
gonna say because like yeah, I see like Maddie in here: leeks, potatoes, salmon, fish stock, whisper of cream. Okay, so I was like, well, that sounds like kind of just like a stew. So you're just replacing the protein, which would make sense given Finland, and I would assume what the plentiful protein they have available to them there would be. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the chowder thing makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm totally on board with that. I would try like a salmon chowder.
I
I
like a
saw
good
some
chowder.
at something like
There we
a
go.
week ago, and it looked pretty good. Okay, so that's yeah. I think I
It's not like the thickest chowder it looks like, but it's still
no,
got
but
enough
that looks.
creaminess in there for you.
I mean, again, I'm a picky eater, and I don't think that looks bad. And I think lots
I'm
of
not a
things.
seafood guy. I would try
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, that actually looks pretty good. It's lighter than an American chowder, Maddie's saying. So yeah, I could get on board with that. I could get on board with that. That looks pretty good. Ice cream and fish soup talk. Yes, Kraken Queen. That's what we're
Yep.
here for.
There would have been a lot more of that if they hadn't completed the comeback. We would have been on there
Yes.
like 15 minutes in.
Yes. And Coco, I'm hoping Gru is up for his bobblehead night on March 4th. Yes.
Oh, that's
That would
something
be
also.
good.
Did you catch John on the broadcast saying his likely return after the break when referring to Grubauer?
I okay, yeah. I thought that's what I heard, but I wasn't gonna like I wasn't gonna trust
It is
myself
what
on
you
that.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I mean, that's
Again,
interesting.
it's what we thought though, right? Like
Yes, no, I mean it's what we thought, but it's
it's what
a
made
little bit more than
sense.
I've heard from being around. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think John, he's just letting stuff fly, seems
I think so
like he
too.
had
And you
that
know what? Right
he,
before the break, why not?
he had that comment on the at the end of that power play, that not the 5-on-3 power play, but the one that came later in the first period, where he was just like he said something along the lines of like another wasted chance on these zone entries where they're just not doing anything, and he just said it so like ugh.
Yep. Yep. Channeling
And
Edzo
I
there.
was like, I'm with you, John. I know where we're coming from here. All right, RJ, as we hit the break here, and as we're approaching the hour chat hour here on post game live, do a quick last call for everybody in chat. If we want anything beyond just the chowder talk here at the end. Kraken do get the win going into the break. It's going to be really interesting to see what they come out of the break looking like, RJ, and whether or not we do see those shifts in things like Shane Wright ice time and stuff there, or if we see maybe like an X's and O's shift where coming out of the break they are playing more conservative in the defensive zone, or maybe they come out and they start playing more physical and there's more of a John Hayden presence in the lineup, something like that. Maybe the defensemen start playing a little bit more physical in their own zone. I think it's going to really tell us a lot. And I know I very much defended Dan and said I want him back for next year earlier, but I do think that is going to be a big kind of test for the coaching staff. Is like, okay, you have this like longer than normal all-star break here. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, and especially given this coaching staff, I feel like they're really going to want to take the time and figure out what changes they can implement. But Dan, Jess, Bob, like they don't seem like the people that would want to just kind of sit idle during a break like this, especially given how things have been going for the team. So I do think we'll see some pretty major adjustments from the team afterward. I mean, the hard part, as it has been all season, is getting the players to kind of buy in and do it consistently, especially because the players, and rightfully so, they're going to be on vacation. Their mind is going to be away from the rink, as it should be, so it might take a little while to kind of fully get implemented and everything. You might need a practice or two, but I imagine we will see some changes.
Right. And Valorant saying, aren't they not allowed to practice during the break? Yeah, I don't think they could practice, but
That's correct.
it's still time for the coaching staff to kind of go over things, think about what they want to do, and then install those systems once you're back from the break and everything. So I do feel like, there is still time for them to focus on those kinds of things, even though they won't be able to be practicing like all of that. And then I do want to answer this question from Jeffrey. Are other NHL teams able to sign certain AHL players like a Daniel Sprong, similar to how in the NFL teams can take a player from a different team's practice squad and add them to their main roster?
Yeah, that's a good question there, Jeffrey. And the short answer is no. Like in Daniel Sprong's case, because he's under an NHL contract with the Kraken, no, the Kraken still have his rights. So other teams can't just go sign him, or he's going to be under that contract. There are certain players playing in the AHL, though, that do have AHL only contracts where they haven't been signed by an NHL team. The AHL team then just signs them to play for them. And if a player like that does really well and an NHL team takes notice, they can then go ahead and sign that player to an NHL contract. But no, for a player like Daniel Sprong, he is the Kraken's property for the rest of that contract.
Yep. All right, everybody. I think that's going to do it for
Appreciate
this.
the happy honeymoon from everybody.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And we certainly hope you have a great time, RJ. I know you got to leave very soon for that. Tomorrow. Yep. Good Super Bowl to travel on. It seems like.
Not really feeling bad about missing that one.
No. Definitely hope you have a ton of fun there. Going to have an interesting version of the deep dive coming out soon here for everybody. So keep your ears out for that one, if that's a phrase. I feel like it should be in today's podcast world. We'll make it one. Appreciate everything. Appreciate Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring the post game live as always. And we will see you all next time.